Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism. It's my hope that everything you learn on this channel will help you navigate the very difficult landscape of these very difficult personalities and relationships and help you come to a far better not only understanding but hopefully a little bit less self-blame. So let's go back to that series that takes on narcissists and money. And we're specifically going to talk about a phenomenon that happens with narcissists around money, which is financial shaming. Narcissists are weird about money, and that's what this series really takes on, because it really, again, everything for them is a transaction, so why not? We know very clearly that narcissistic folks are really difficult and frankly quite odd when it comes to money. The stinginess, sometimes being really generous, too generous, abusing people with money, controlling people with money. So, what about shaming people with money or about money? This is a big theme we see in narcissistic relationships. Now, when it comes to narcissism, shame is often part of a larger sort of system of projection. They project their shame and other shortcomings on other people. So, why not this? When it comes to financial shaming, it can take on many different forms, and it has many different functions. So, let's take on the various forms and functions of financial shaming that narcissistic people can engage in. The first is domination and control. And we really took this theme on a lot in the original financial abuse video in the series. Narcissistic people will use money as a way to overpower people. For example, they might do something as petty as buy something so another person can't have it. They make choices that others can't make. They control people through money. Money is such a necessary evil in our lives that the people who have it often hold disproportionate power, and narcissistic people with money will use that money to hold it over other people and get what they want from it, most pointedly, usually narcissistic supply. Life with a narcissist is like living with low-grade extortion all the time. These are entirely transactional relationships, and ultimately, the narcissist just needs supply, and money is a very fast and efficient way to get it. As a result, they will shame people as part of this. Like, hey buddy, nice car. I know, I can see that you can't afford the newest one. You want to try mine out to see what it's like? Or shaming someone who can't afford to participate maybe in something fun thing or something like their family wants to do, and the narcissist coming along like some kind of pseudo savior, coming along and saying, hey, why don't you join us? You don't want your kids to see that you're not able to make this happen for them? And then, to add the cherry on top, then the narcissistic person will likely drop passive-aggressive barbs, reminding the person that the only reason that they're along for the ride is because the narcissistic person is so nice and so generous. They may use money in the workplace to shame someone who may actually be a better performer and more skilled than the narcissist. But because most workplaces are too slow-witted to understand narcissism and end up advancing the people who have these manipulative personalities, the narcissistic folks may use their higher standing in a company or any institution as a way to control and shame colleagues who actually are better than them, and also a way of showing them who's boss. For example, dangling a raise in front of them, but reminding them that you still report to me. A narcissistic parent may shame an adult child. They may keep giving the adult child money as they need it, but will remind them, well, you never really were able to take care of yourself or make anything of yourself, but we can help you out. I mean, gosh, by your age, I'd already made my first $1 million, but, I'll just keep helping you out. Second, and sort of building on this domination and control piece, is financial shaming as a way of maintaining status. Let's face it. Sadly, in our culture, we worship billionaires and people of vast wealth. I'm not sure why we do that, but sadly, we do. So having money pretty much guarantees status. And status allows a narcissistic person to feel safe, less threatened, and in more control. Status seeking is a primary regulatory tool, self-regulation tool for narcissistic people who are obsessed with hierarchies and being at the top of them. It's not just enough for them to have the status, but they also like to diminish those who don't have as much status as them, and they may do that with money. They may invite people over, for example, to their big, fancy, lavish home, and then toss in tidbits during the conversation, asking unkind questions like, "Oh, I'm glad you like our house. How's your view? Bet it's nothing like this, huh? Huh? Or, how do you manage your large lawn? Oh, I see. Oh, you don't have a lawn?" It's a bit of an anatomical swinging contest, and it's not enough to have all the toys and the money, but also to shame those who don't have it, and showing it all off and pretentiously yammering on about it. Because for a narcissist, why have it if you can't use it to shame people? Narcissistic parents may shame a child's occupational choice for no other reason than that it doesn't pay well. A narcissistic friend may shame another friend for not making money and for choosing a job that helps people instead of that one that makes a lot of money and sets themselves up well financially. So much of this is a shaming about things or values or activities that matter to a person because they do not result in the tool of domination, money. And you can't win because if you did make a lot of money, those same narcissistic people who are shaming you would be threatened by you, and they would still find a way to shame you. For example, if you are the one with the sports car, they'd be like, "Oh, what are you compensating for?" The third means of shaming is contempt. And this is interesting. Narcissistic people are actually somewhat uncomfortable when they have to spend time with people who are not as successful or well off as them. You would think that a narcissistic person should be so happy they're with someone who absolutely cannot compete with them, is no threat, that they have totally checkmated this other person in terms of money, power, and status. It's a strange dynamic. When narcissistic people see people who don't have as much, and for some reason, who the hell knows why, a narcissistic person has to be in proximity to this person that they perceive to be lesser, it gets weird. Now, envy plays a big part of this. Envy is a total catch-22 for narcissistic personalities. They either envy people or they assume that people envy them. You can't win. In addition, if the narcissist is spending time with people who don't have as much status as them, their appraisal is like, what's the point? They aren't making what they would consider to be a useful connection. They aren't getting supply from people that they perceive as having high status. So in a way, having to spend time with who they view to be lower status people, especially around money, makes them very uncomfortable. They will often be quite contemptuous. For example, if they have to be with people they consider below them, contemptuous of the surroundings, of the setting, of the people. And much of it will be this snobby discourse around resources, saying things like, "I don't know if I want to be seen in a place like this," or "Who are these people and why are we here?" This contempt can also come out in 100 small ways, including mockery of the circumstances or the social station of the people in attendance. And this sort of rolls into the fourth issue, which is a major way that the financial shaming happens, which is plain old-fashioned arrogance and snobbery. Narcissists are snobs, and that is the insecurity. All snobs are insecure. A secure billionaire, if there is such a thing, don't know any billionaires, and I can't imagine many of them are secure, but a secure billionaire knows that they have the money in the bank. And if they were secure and healthy, they could be comfortably with a variety of people without having disdain and contempt for those people. I have to tell you a story. It's interesting. I remember once being at an event where there was a real mix of people at this event because of the nature of the event. And I watched this happen. Someone asked someone, "Oh, where did you vacation this year?" And the person offered up the name of a campground on the New England shoreline. It's absolutely a glorious location, beautiful campground. The narcissistic snob listening, having this conversation said, "Oh, is that anywhere near such and such?" And they provided the name of a very elite enclave that only fancy people vacation in. And the person, the camping person, said, I don't know where that is." It was actually painful and uncomfortable to watch because the person asking about like where this is and what it's near was actually trying to kind of show their disgust and contempt for the person who only had the finances to camp. And the camping person clearly enjoyed the camping trip. Honestly, years ago, I remember being on the receiving end of this kind of narcissistic financial shaming snobbery. Clearly, I am not a snappy or designer brand dresser. I never have been. I'm largely a secondhand or discount store person. It's just, fashion ain't my thing. And I arrived at an event that was full of narcissistic fools. I had gone to this event because it was going to allow me to see really close up some artworks that are not traditionally on display at a local museum, and I was going to be able to get really close to them. Someone I happened to know had an extra ticket they could not use, and they threw it my way, knowing my admiration for this particular museum and these particular pieces of work. When I arrived at this museum at this event, one of the women in attendance approached me and spoke slowly and loudly. I'm guessing she assumed I didn't speak English, and she said, "Oh, you must be the volunteer to take us on the tour." I was like, "Sure, okay." So when I said, "No, I'm not," this bitch doubled down and then said, "Oh, yes, I didn't recognize you. You don't live in this part of town, so I wouldn't expect to see you so far from home. And I certainly didn't expect to see you here." "No, you wouldn't, because I couldn't afford to live near you, and the tickets to this thing were like $500. The lovely person who gave the ticket to me ended up being out of town and couldn't make it, so I was really the beneficiary of that happening. Financial shaming is so subtle, isn't it? She didn't come out and say, "Hey, love your Target shoes, and how the hell did you swing the $500 when you live next to the freeway?" Instead, she used so many nonverbals. The dismissiveness. It was sniffy contempt. Now listen, the best part of being a narcissism researcher and studier is that the world is a living laboratory. I guess it would be like being an orchid researcher and living in a rainforest. Now I looked at her. I didn't respond to her. Deep technique: don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, don't personalize. The paintings ended up being absolutely glorious. I was able to talk to the person who worked at the museum to ask about them. I grabbed a handful of their fancy appetizers and left before their dinner began. It would have been too atrocious to be in the midst of these people. I came, I saw what I wanted to see. I felt so fortunate to get to see it. But over the ensuing years, I had contact with this woman, and I watched her do this to other people over the ensuing years. It was very painful to watch the humiliation in their faces as she shamed them too. I have heard of this kind of theme happening in families when one sibling financially succeeds far more than the other. I've heard this happening amongst a group of friends in which, for example, there has been a narcissist that gets into their midst. I've seen this happen in workplace and with couples. The transactional nature of narcissistic relationships can mean that a more well-resourced partner will sometimes, interestingly, choose a partner that is actually financially does not have nearly the resources they have. That way they can control them. But then we'll turn around and shame that partner for not having the resources or not being familiar with their fancy world. You can't win. But this is actually, their financial shaming is actually a really easy weapon to diffuse. Just don't fall for it. No human being, the measure of no human being is their money. And money, I think we ought to agree, sure as hell makes life easier, but is never the measure of a person. So if you don't get into it with them and make a mental note to steer clear of this person in the future and don't ooh and on whatever toy they're showing you, and at least avoid anything but the most non-optional encounter like family or work encounter, you can write it off to their inadequacy and their sad need for dominance. It can help you steer clear from a sense of shame and keep it housed where it belongs, in the narcissistic person. And you know what? You can have a little bit of fun with it. When they ask you where your bag is from, you can say, they were giving them away for free at the grocery store. Don't try to out superficial them. Just keep it real. Because if there's one thing that can slay a narcissist, it's good old-fashioned, honest, authentic truth. Don't let them shame you about your money. Thanks again.